Hey, are we ready to get started again? Because we got rock steady boxing coming any minute now. Get ready to loosen up. Kevin Quinn and Rock Steady Boxing Warrior Fit has some great moves. Kevin Quinn put on his first set of boxing gloves when he was 9 years old, followed by a lifetime of training and competing in karate, kickboxing, boxing, judo, and jiu-jitsu. He has been teaching martial arts and self-defense in some form since high school. It is clear to Kevin that while the physical training in rock steady boxing is of paramount importance in assisting people with Parkinson's to rise above the disease, it is the community of spirit, which I think we're all feeling a little bit today. The community of spirit, the great poet Rumi spoke of, that is the true secret sauce in the elixir of rock steady boxing. Kevin, come on up.
Thank you, Marcy. I imagine that for many of you, getting that first diagnosis that you had Parkinson's must have felt like getting hit in the gut by Mike Tyson. At Rock Steady Boxing, we teach you how to punch him back. Like Evander Holyfield, both pre- and post-ear biting incident. Parkinson's has threatened to steal your life as you know it. At Rock Steady Boxing, we teach you how to take it back with hard work, humor, and above all, community. Parkinson's has even attempted to steal your hope. It's trying to take your hope. Rock Steady Boxing, we have a motto that says, in this corner, hope. In this corner, hope. If you've lost your hope, we show you how to get it back. We just returned from the annual coach conference where coaches and boxers who have Parkinson's, who are also coaches, gathered from around the world to share their love for this community, their appreciation for this divinely inspired program, and to teach and learn how to do our job better. We are over 1,000 strong around the world, our coaches. We are over 10,000 boxers training every day how to beat back Parkinson's. Our learned brothers and sisters, the neurologists, the physical therapists, the exercise scientists, will tell you that Rock Steady Boxing improves your balance, your strength, your gait, and all of that is true. But there is something much, much deeper going on here. Perhaps it's the fact that we are literally fighting against the same foe. Perhaps it's what I call Irish therapy. We hit things a lot. And yes, from time to time, we'll gather and drink. I don't know for sure. What I do know is that the deeper, more profound benefit of engaging with us isn't going to show up on a number on a graph necessarily. It's not going to show up on a blood test, but it is most definitely there. The great Jimmy Choi was our keynote speaker too. That's my new thing. I'm referring to him as the great Jimmy Choi. And it's not just because he is great, right? I mean, come on. He's amazing. He's fantastic. And I'm not just saying that to butter him up so that he'll show up at my gym and train with my fighters. Okay, maybe a little bit. Okay, maybe more than a little bit. Jimmy, call me. In our gyms around the world, we see you. We see you coming in, holding tightly to walkers, afraid to fall yet again. And 6 weeks later, we see you've traded in your walker for a pair of boxing gloves and are chasing us around the mats, hoping to land that one good shot. We see you, some of you, head held high, a bit too much on your toes, a little hitch in your giddy up, a little stumble in your gait, but with a smile that says, is there hope that this community will see me for me and not for my disease? And soon thereafter, we see you extending your hand to welcome in the newbies and let them know that in fact they have found another home. We see you. We see you. And we see some of you, you younger ones, coming in with a quiet rage, pacing back and forth at the edge of our mats like a panther in a cage, angry. We see you in not too long down the road, coming into the circle more and more, extending your hand, but still with that fierce, murderous look in your eyes that says, something or somebody has to pay for this. And we welcome you. We see you. We see you. I see you. As Marcy said, the great 13th century poet Rumi wrote, there is the community of spirit. Join it and delight in walking the noisy street, in being the noise. At Rocksteady Boxing, we are that community of spirit, and we definitely be the noise. We may not ever beat that son of a bitch Parkinson's, but by God, we're gonna go out swinging and dancing and singing and crying and laughing and picking each other up and holding each other's hands as we make our way home. As we make our way home. But it is not time to throw in the towel yet. There's much too much work to be done. There's too much fun to be had. There's too much love to be shared. There's too much gratitude to feel. So I ask you to rise up and yell and punch for all you're worth. Don't worry about the punches and the combinations. As we say in Rocksteady Boxing, when in doubt, punch. If you can stand, I want you to stand up and yell with me in a military-style cadence and throw punches. If you can't stand, that's okay. You can practice your bar stool boxing. Because you don't know, you might have to fight from a bar stool where some fool tried to take your drink. It happens. It happens a couple times. Anyway, stand up with me. Stand up with me. Connect with that inner warrior, that champion of your beautiful heart, and yell for all you're worth. Yell as if your life depends on it, because it just might. Parkinson's is trying to steal your voice as you know it. In Rocksteady Boxing, we also have a motto, fight back. We fight back. So in a military-style cadence, just repeat after me. I don't know, but I've been told. This Parkinson's getting really old. Sound off. 1, 2. Sound off. 3, 4. Break it down. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Petey's trying to knock us out. We're gonna rock and we're gonna shout. Sound off. 1, 2. Sound off. 3, 4. Break it down. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Our bones crack and our bones pop. That's okay, we ain't gonna stop. Sound up, 1, 2, sound up, 3, 4, add 2, 5, 6, add 2 more, 7, 8, break it down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Tell PD what we're gonna do. We're gonna beat the crap out of you. Sound up, 1, 2, sound up, 3, 4, add 2, 5, 6, add 2 more, 7, 8, break it down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Woo! Give yourself a hand. All right, we're gonna bring up some of our boxers to show you some of what they learned, strut their stuff, and hopefully they don't knock me out. All right, first up, we got Norm. Come on, Norm. I did have a dream that when I was doing this a few weeks ago, that one of my boxers actually did hit me on the chin and knock me out, and I woke up looking at the lights going, damn, how the hell did I get here? And there was a big roar from the crowd. I went, oh, I was so proud. Don't do that. Yeah. Yes. Breathe. One more. Go. Woo! All right, Norm, give him a hand. Good job, brother. Next, we got Shirley. She may be small, but she's mighty. And she's going to talk smack to me. Shirley likes to talk smack. You can take that from me?
No, you're going to need that.
Have you heard that? She said, I'm going to need this. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Come on, girly girl. Show me what you got. Big boy pants on.
Yeah, for me, yeah.
You want a piece of me? Hut, hut, hut.
One more.
Hut, hut, hut.
Give her a hand. That was awesome. Next up, we got Dangerous Dave. Come on, Dave. You go that way. Oops, careful. All right, Dave. Come on. Boom, up right hand. Go. There it is. Yeah. Go. Come on. Yeah, that's it. Go. Come on. Right hand. Come on. One more. He wants to hit me so bad. Good job, brother. Give him a hand, y'all. Last but certainly not least, we got Dodie. Come on, Dodie. Big up. Yes. Big. Yeah. Yep. One more. All right. Good job. Give her a hand, y'all. So we ask you, do not go gentle into that good night. Rage with us against the dying light, and laugh, and sing, and dance. One more chant. It's how we close our classes. If you will, you don't have to stand, but yell. Please yell from deep within you. It makes a difference. It makes a difference to not just move your feet, to not just move your hands. As Jimmy was talking about, get in touch with that inner warrior, what I call the champion of that exquisitely beautiful heart that is yours move from the inner direction of your soul. That makes a difference. Then it's just not calisthenics. It's something much deeper, something much more important, something much better. So repeat after me as loud as you can. Hope in our corner. I'm gonna try that again. Hope in our corner. Tough love on our side. That feeling we have is rock steady pride. In answer to the question, who am I, you yell, I'm a champion as loud as you can. Who am I? Oh, we can do better than that. Who am I? Awesome. On the count of 3, you'll fight back. 1, 2, 3, fight back. Awesome. If this work calls to you, come play with us. If this work calls to you, come dance with us. If this work calls to you, come fight with us. We'll fight for you. May God bless you all.
Greetings, everybody, and thank you, Kevin, for that program. It's my pleasure to introduce the next speaker. There are actually 2 speakers, but I'll introduce the first one. She'll introduce the other one. This is Dr. Noriko Malhado-Chang. She's a professor of neurology at the University of California, Davis School of Medicine in Sacramento. She studied neuropsychology at New York University and graduated from Mount Sinai School of Medicine. Dr. Malhado-Chang is in her 14th year at faculty at UC Davis, where she directs the clinical clerkship and sub-internship in neurology. Her passion is Parkinson's disease and teaching learners at all levels, from elementary school through fellowship, and sharing her enthusiasm for neurology, Parkinson's disease, doctoring, and education. Thank you, and here's Dr. Malhado-Chang.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. It's wonderful to be in person and get to see all of you. I'm going to sit down and I'd like to introduce my special guest for today, Dr. Grace Amati. Grace, have a seat. Dr. Amati is an assistant clinical professor of family and community medicine, as well as hospice and palliative care medicine at UC Davis. She completed her undergraduate studies at Duke University in North Carolina, and attended medical school at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. She did her internship and residency training in family and community medicine at Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia, and she then went on to additional training in palliative medicine at Christiana Care Hospital in Delaware, so she could better help patients make healthcare decisions and manage symptoms in advanced and chronic diseases. When I asked her what was her motivation for going into palliative care, she cited the desire to bridge the frequent miscommunications between patients and their doctors. She enjoys getting to know her patients as individuals and what really matters to them. And patient and family education is especially important in her practice. On a personal level, Dr. Amati has a deep appreciation for the humanities and arts. She was even an art history major at Duke University. And we're absolutely thrilled to have Dr. Amati on faculty at UC Davis, and even more excited to introduce her to PANC and the amazing extended Parkinson's community here in Sacramento and beyond. And so I'd like you all to extend a warm welcome to Dr. Amati. Thank you so much. I should take my mask off. for being here and for sharing with everyone your expertise. What I'd like to talk about first is introduce, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your training. You train specifically in palliative care, and a lot of us don't really understand what is palliative care.
Great. Thank you so much for having me here. It's really just been amazing to see this wonderful community and how much you are engaged in your care. So I wanted to come and introduce a little bit more about what palliative care is. So palliative care is a specialized form of medicine that is an extra layer of support for patients and their families or caregivers to help deal with the stress as well as the symptoms of living with a serious chronic illness. It's often delivered through a multidisciplinary team, and it's really focused on patients' quality of life.
So is palliative care for everyone here, or is it for specific people? Is it at a more later stage of disease? Who does palliative care work for?
So I always say that palliative care the need for it is dependent on patient or caregiver need rather than any form of prognosis. So I often see this as something that is very symptom-based rather than thinking about a certain amount of time.
And so when do you think palliative care should be introduced, and who should introduce it?
Well, that's a very good question. So palliative care can be introduced really at any point along a patient's journey with illness. So some people receive palliative care right at the beginning when they receive a diagnosis. Other people might wait until they develop more symptoms. And then for some people wait until near the end of their journey with serious illness.
And what kind of doctors provide palliative care? You are a special case because you went on to specialized training for palliative care. There's not too many people like you who have this kind of training. What kind of doctors should people seek out if they want to incorporate palliative care?
Great. So palliative care can exist in many different forms. So kind of like you were alluding to, right now there's only about one palliative care doctor for every 1,200 patients with serious illnesses. So access might be somewhat limited for patients with serious illnesses. So to that effect, if a palliative care doctor is available in your area, that's wonderful. Other people that can become part of your palliative care team, though, are just other doctors that you already have an established relationship with. So many primary care doctors, as well as neurologists, have an understanding of being able to talk about things like symptom management, as well as advanced care planning.
So we learned earlier during the prodromal talk about all of the non-motor symptoms of Parkinson's, and we all know that these can be some of the biggest challenges to quality of life, right? So constipation, depression, anxiety, sleep problems, right? How does palliative care improve the quality of life for people who are suffering from non-motor symptoms?
Great. So palliative care is really centered around what is important to a patient and their family and caregivers. And the way that I often structure these visits is really thinking about what is the most bothersome symptoms to patients. So part of why I feel so lucky to be a palliative care doctor is because rather than focusing on a disease state and saying, oh, our goal today is we really have to focus on this and maybe we'll adjust this medication that we started you on, I get to start visits very open-ended and say, what is the thing that's bothering you the most right now? And if it is a symptom like constipation or depression or anxiety, those are the things that I get to spend my time with, whether it is an intervention that might include medications, but also might include members of my multidisciplinary team, such as chaplain support or social worker support.
Yeah, we really love the idea of the multidisciplinary team. Last year, that was one of the themes here at our PANC conference. If you guys remember, we talked about how important it is to really incorporate a vast array of specialists because it really is complex. It's very, very complicated. There's a lot of different specialists who could contribute their own expertise, and it sounds like you kind of harness all of those specialties within your practice.
Definitely. Just like people are very multifaceted and they are more than just Parkinson's or their medical disease, so because of that, we also have to address what's going on in a multifaceted approach. So we might be able to look at the medical symptoms, but we also want to know what's happening socially, spiritually, and so forth.
So one of the reasons why I chose Dr. Ahmadi to introduce to you all is she has a very significant focus on patient-centeredness. And I absolutely love that. And it's about meeting patients where they are and having really challenging conversations. Some of these conversations are really difficult, right? It goes beyond talking about a tremor or talking about balance, right? It's addressing those elephants in the room, talking about cognitive impairment and, will I be a burden on my family? These are some really, really difficult conversations that people may not feel comfortable with talking about at all, but you bring those up. How do you kind of broach the topic and have these difficult conversations?
So I guess before I answer that question, I wanted to back up and I think give a little bit of context about how it is that I became interested in having these conversations. And what I remember is when I decided to be a doctor because I wanted to help people and be with them during some of the most, through challenges as well as celebrations. And when I was in medical school, I had this unfortunate event happen where I lived in a pretty crummy apartment, and I had a landlord that wasn't interested in fixing anything. So unfortunately what happened was I had to eventually ask for help through the student legal aid office to try to reach my landlord and try to get some things moving. And I met with the legal counsel person, and I remember that she was so empathetic to my situation. She's extremely knowledgeable. And yet at the end of that visit with her, I was really confused still, and I still didn't know exactly what was going to happen next. I didn't know if anything would change. And that really impacted the way that I thought about what future interactions might be with patients, that even though I might know a lot, even though I might really care, there was still this disconnect. She was trying to help as much as she could. I was trying to communicate as best as I could my situation, but somehow we were missing each other. So that's kind of the mindset that I go in with when I meet with patients is, I assume we want to be on the same page, but sometimes there's things that are unspoken or it could be unspoken because of fear or anxiety, or because it's not even something that people have really reflected on before. And so I hope to really create a space where people can really think about, okay, so what is it that I am really most hopeful for? Can I name that hope? Is that hope going to be crazy? Is someone going to laugh at me if I say that out loud? And then similarly, on the other side, what am I really worried about? What am I scared is going to happen? Is it okay for me to say that out loud? Does that mean that I'm giving up hope? And the answer to that is no. As well as, by naming that fear, we can really try to make a plan so that thing is less likely to happen.
Wow. My gosh, I feel like I would like to come visit you too. I just feel that allowing people to always stay their authentic selves is really a goal that I think we'd all have. And to be able to have you in our corner or doctors like you, I think would just be so empowering. One of the terms we hear a lot is, and you guys may have heard this brought up by some of your care teams, is goals of care. So what does that actually mean? What do we mean when we ask somebody, what are your goals of care?
Right, so goals of care can be defined in many different ways, and it's really very, again, patient-focused. It can be as simple as, what are you hoping for next? Is it that you want to be able to attend this event? Is it that you want to be able to be present at the birth of your grandchild? So it can be very event-specific. Sometimes, though, people want to name other parts of goals of care, and those goals might be, if I were to get so sick that I needed a certain amount of care, where would that care take place? Would it take place in the hospital? Would it take place at home? And then from there, we can really talk about anything in between.
Yeah. So is that part of the term advanced care planning? Does the goals of care and advanced care planning, where does one end and the other one begin?
So goals, so you might have heard the term advanced care planning, you might have heard the term goals of care, and in general I would say that people in the medical profession tend to use them pretty interchangeably. So the important thing about goals of care and advanced care planning is that they truly are conversations, and conversations that are best had in the context of both a patient being there as well as some of their loved ones, because a lot of times goals of care are important to know when you can talk to somebody. And when we can talk to someone, we can always ask them, oh, what are your goals? What are your hopes now? The difficult part comes when there's an emergency situation or a consequence where we're no longer able to communicate as readily with somebody. So we want to have that conversation early, which is why we say it's an advanced care plan.
Mm-hmm. I think this all contributes and ties into health literacy, right? Being more educated so that you can become empowered to control your own future.
For sure, yeah. Health education is a huge part of what I do in palliative care. It's something it seems like that is very important to all of you too, which is why you guys have this wonderful conference. And luckily for your patients, it sounds like something that you're really committed to as well.
Yeah, I think you're kind of speaking to the choir here, because obviously by attending these educational conferences, everyone here is increasing their own health literacy, but it may not be something that it may not be a conversation that you have with your doctor, right? So I think this is hopefully inspire you also to bring these topics up so that the conversation goes beyond controlling a tremor, right? Or controlling motor symptoms. These are a bigger picture conversations that I really think allows each of you to stay in control and to be writing your own future. I want to talk a little bit about something that you do in your practice, Dr. Amadi, that I absolutely love, and you call it social prescribing. What is social prescribing all about?
Yeah, so social prescribing is all about kind of, again, being aware that illness is not just one-dimensional. So illness affects our bodies, but there's so many more aspects of us and so many aspects then that illness touches. So there's the physical aspect, the biochemistry, what's going on in the brain, but that definitely affects the social aspects, the psychological aspects, and so forth. Recently, there's just been a lot of awareness, I think, luckily, that loneliness or social isolation really has a huge, huge impact on patients' health. So there's been studies out there that shows that social isolation or loneliness can lead to worse health outcomes. And so when I hear something like that, I realize that the answer to everything isn't just more medications. The answer to that really is, let's find the root cause, which is that we really need to think about addressing the fact that serious health conditions can lead to kind of social withdrawal naturally, as symptoms worsen, or just feeling like less comfortable in your own skin, so being more hesitant to kind of venture out the way that you used to, and really saying, this is the natural thing that you might want to do at this time, but actually, I want to prevent the loneliness from happening. And so we have to be even more aggressive about getting you out there and being in a community.
Oh my gosh, I think that's so well said, because the natural inclination, when you're having symptoms, or you didn't sleep really well the night before, or it's been 4 days since the last bowel movement, the inclination is to stay home. If someone calls you out and says, hey, let's go for a walk, or let's come to this get together, the inclination is to say like, oh, I think I'm gonna pass, And that's just kind of the way life takes us. And the truth is, what you're describing is a prescription for the opposite, right? It's the prescription for socialization, and using socialization as a medication, as a therapy. That's what this is, right? This is socialization. It's just amazing. I can't tell you how beautiful it is to see all of your faces. But this is boosting my dopamine, and I hope it's boosting yours too, because it is just as powerful. And I can tell you as a neurologist that we have very strong data to suggest the benefits both for serotonin, for dopamine, for norepinephrine, for improvements in cognitive function, right? So the more you socialize, the more conversation you have and put yourself out there and go to events, even if it's just soaking it all in, that all has long-term cognitive benefit. We also have what Dr. Amati, I understand you're saying, is that it's benefit for health outcomes overall. So imagine how powerful that is, just to think of socializing as a medication. So, and I think this is just a prime time to talk about this, because it's been nearly 2 years since we've been able to do this. And I'm sure in your practice, you have probably seen the toll that's taken on people in general, right? COVID.
Definitely. So COVID affects us in many ways, and I think that one of the ways that I've really seen it is kind of the social isolation and loneliness. One thing that I want to encourage you with is, when we have done studies on experience of loneliness, that it's a really surprising number. They say somewhere around a third to a half of all adults greater than 45 have experienced loneliness that has affected them. And so thinking about that, I just think sometimes we feel really hesitant to put ourselves out there, but the truth is that I think everyone is sort of feeling hesitant to put themselves out there. So the idea that you can be here in this space, I really want to commend you for that, because it could very well be that a lot of people here are feeling socially isolated.
Right. And it's uncomfortable, but sometimes it's okay to be uncomfortable.
Right.
We have to put ourselves in that uncomfortable position sometimes. Mm-hmm. And if there's ever a question about it, remember this: it is for your future, and it's for the benefit of your health overall. So thank you for that. I want to move a little bit towards the other half, or sometimes what I call the better half, is the caregiver, right? And tell me a little bit about what palliative care can do for the caregiver and the family member, or the support network.
Right. So I'm very biased, but I think that palliative care is just a really wonderful way of delivering care. And I think one of the ways that palliative care distinguishes itself from other more traditional forms of medical specialties is that there's this awareness that patients are not kind of just by themselves. And patients often have caregivers, which can be family or other relatives or friends, or people who have been hired to help. And those people undergo significant life changes too. It is a tremendous responsibility to be caring for somebody and to learn about all the things that they need to do. And I think palliative care kind of gives acknowledgement to the fact that this is kind of the way that illness is experienced. And so part of my role in seeing patients is talking both to patients as well as it gives me space to check in with caregivers and say, how are things going for you? What are the resources that you're looking for yourself personally?
Looking out and seeing, I think half of everyone here in the audience fall into that category, right? We're all caregivers. You all have heard my story before, being a caregiver for my mother with Parkinson's disease. She has attended meetings, these conferences in the past. Sometimes she's come with other caregivers who have supported her, including my son who brought her one time. And one of the reasons why I feel so passionate about supporting the caregiver is because when the caregiver is supported and the caregiver has less stress, the patient has better health outcomes, don't they?
Right.
So it really is just a critical piece of the overall wellness to incorporate the caregiver. And what I love about palliative care is that for palliative care, that's part of it. It's not even a second thought. That is the caregiver is absolutely part of the treatment team. Another thing reason why my mother can't be with us today is because we have shifted our goals of care and she is now part of Dr. Ahmadi's team at UC Davis for hospice care. So I wanted to just touch on that a little bit. I know hospice is not palliative care, they're not the same thing, but maybe you can help everyone here understand what is the difference and what is hospice?
Sure. So hospice is an enhanced form of palliative care that is appropriate just for a subset of patients receiving palliative care. So it's appropriate for patients who are nearing the end of their life. Oftentimes we define this as well as we can predict about 6 months or so of life. Hospice distinguishes itself from palliative care by being kind of, as I said, it's kind of an enhanced form of palliative care. So it is really kind of the best wraparound services that we have for patients. So when patients qualify for hospice, they get, again, another multidisciplinary team, and this team includes nurses, nursing assistants, often physical therapy, and then depending on needs of the patient, sometimes additional services like social work, chaplain, respiratory therapy, speech therapy, all these things could happen, and it covers also a lot of these other parts of a patient's care, like equipment and so forth. Hospice is something that often looks kind of like a continuation of care as disease progresses, and it can happen and it most often happens in a patient's home.
But it can be up to the patient to determine that, right? I mean, I think that's the beauty of being able to write your own future, is to be able to choose what you want as an individual, as opposed to having the hospitals decide for you, right? And I think that is really that was my mother's wishes, to always be in control. I want things playing out the way I want. I want to be the author of this whole story. And I think that the palliative care team has just been amazing at putting her wishes first, in front of everything else. So So perhaps what you've described so far, and so I can repeat and make sure everyone understands, that palliative care is really an added layer of support. And who can't use another layer of support? I mean, this is a challenging situation, it's a difficult journey. The more layers of support that we can incorporate, the better, right? So how do we go ahead and ask ourselves, if I was, if I didn't know about palliative care and I was sitting in the audience, how do you suggest I ask for it? How do I talk to my doctors about palliative care?
That is a great question, and hopefully one that I hope that you guys all end up asking your doctors. So the way that I might approach palliative care is remembering that palliative care is actually still a pretty young field. So like I was mentioning before, there might be there might be palliative care clinics in your area, or there might not be. And the way that I might bring that up with the doctors that you already have relationships with is to say, I have been hearing more about palliative care, and I think it's something that I am interested in. Is there anyone that I could talk to that can help treat symptoms or help talk to me more about advanced care planning? And what might happen then is that they might be able to refer you to someone who's a palliative care specialist, or they might be able to refer you to a social worker who helps with advanced care planning. Or they might say, those are things that I am happy to do for you. A lot of primary care doctors, as well as neurologists, also have a passion to help with some of these conversations. And if you already have a great and trusting relationship with some of these, they can happen in the context of relationships that you already have with the doctors you know.
That really sounds good, because I didn't realize those numbers that you shared before. There's really not that many palliative care doctors out there. So we need to enlist our own doctors, our own movement disorder neurologists or our primary care doctors, and really initiate these conversations ourselves, and perhaps they can be the ones to incorporate the support that palliative care gives.
Definitely. And the other thing that I would say too is that, kind of as I was explaining before, what are the most significant parts of my encounters with patients, uncovering things like what your biggest hopes are and what your biggest fears or worries are, those are things that you could also then start to volunteer with your doctor and not wait for them to necessarily say them. But I know that as a doctor, sometimes there's a lot of other things that need to be adjusted and so forth. But if a patient were to stop me and say, I really want to make sure that I make it known that I'm really worried about, how I'm feeling lately. I feel very anxious. That would definitely stop me in my tracks and make sure that I'm addressing that. And that's a way for you to maybe change the conversation with some of the doctors that you have to make sure that they're addressing kind of all of the aspects of the illness that you have.
I think that's a good point. Sometimes when we're in the visit with our physicians, we wait for the questions to be asked of us, right? And we don't volunteer those things like, no, hold on, I'm feeling really anxious. And I love that piece of advice. So what I'm taking away from Dr. Amati is that, number one, tell your doctor, what are my hopes? Tell your doctor, what is my greatest fear? And how can you help me to navigate that? And what are some of the supports that you can provide to address those and to ease that? I sometimes hear my patients tell me that, oh, palliative care, that sounds very hopeless. But what I'm hearing here, and what I hope all of you are hearing, is that palliative care promotes hope and promotes healing.
That's definitely true. I would say that sometimes when people hear my title of, oh, you're a palliative care doctor, that must be really difficult. But I actually find that palliative care is something that I chose to get additional training for, because I found that it was really such a beautiful time to work with patients, because it's a time in which kind of priorities are heightened and everything is really focused on what is it that we're all working towards? Can we all work towards that together and make a better life for what a patient as well as their family is hoping for.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for keeping that in the light. I'm actually going to, just as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about my greatest fears in my own life and my greatest joys in my own life, and prioritizing those and bringing those up with those that I love, as well as my care team. So I think this is I think it really does promote hope, and it promotes healing. And I hope that all of you got something out of this and learned something new about palliative care and the role that it has to empower you, to put you in control, and to be able to let you write your own future. Thank you so much, Dr. Amati. It was wonderful having you. And we'll see you around. We'll be around for questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I think we will.
Thank you, Dr. Malhado-Chang and Dr. Amati, for such an informative presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, we've made it to lunch, and today's lunch is sponsored by Abbott. Remember, actually, lunch has already been delivered to many of your tables, so you should have plenty of time to go ahead and eat and visit the vendors during the break, and also see the exhibitors here in the room. And speaking of that, if you happen to pick up a little blue box from one of the vendors, they were on display for sale, so if you have it, could you return those? Also, we didn't forget about our virtual attendees. Two of our board members, Dr. Frederick Lowe and Eric Jones, will be streaming our exhibit area and the general admission area, or general session. So please, everyone, thank you. Enjoy your lunch, and we'll see you back at 12:40.